Let's talk about the new Harvesting the Cosmos collection from Terra Cosmetics. We have 15 single eyeshadows that are launching, and you will be able to buy them as a bundle or individually. So there's 5 mattes and then 10 varying different textures and finishes of shimmers. Very much fall themed. We have some grungy greens, some grungy olive tones, oranges, mustards, etc. And this collection is launching August 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I do have an affiliate code, which I'll put up on the screen. Thank you so much if you use my code. I don't have the details of the pricing of the shadows yet, but I would assume that some of these have the multi-chrome pricing and some of them have more of the satin shade pricing and the in-between. So I'm assuming these are going to vary between like $8 to $17 each. And I did receive this collection in PR, so thank you so much to Terra for sending it over to me. So I'm going to be showing you detailed swatches of the shimmer shadows. I'm going to be showing you only a couple of comparisons to other Terra shadows because I definitely felt like some of the shades, the moment I saw them, I kind of thought, oh, I feel like I've seen something similar from Terra already. And then at the end of the video, I'll give you some of my thoughts. So let's get right into it. First two shades are Gamma Velorum and Emerald Eclipse, and these are more satin-like shades, and they're very opaque. And they are very, very, very smooth and super easy to for sure pick up with a brush if you don't like using your hands. This is a really dark olive green, and this is like a brighter pink leaning red, definitely not like a true red. Next two shades are Ion Dust and Pyrite, and these are very shiny. I would say Pyrite is a little bit more shiny. And it also looks like it has slightly larger sparkles, almost like glitter particles in it. That is what makes it a little bit more sparkly. And I mean, just look at how metallic they are. So beautiful. This is a warm bronze with a slightly silvery reflect to it with some of the sparkles in it. And then this is kind of like a cooler toned cream slash like a champagne, but if it was cooler toned. And it definitely has a little bit like of a taupe touch to it, specifically kind of on an angle like this. Next two shades are Scorched Earth and Nova Mirage. These are definitely a little bit more smoother, kind of in between satins I swatched and the second set of swatches that were a little bit more metallic. So these are just a little bit really, really smooth. This one's super glowy. And then this one's almost kind of like a black base multi-chrome, but it doesn't have the black base, but it has that kind of almost jewel look to it. I feel like these you could sheer out if you wanted to. The top shade is a really vibrant, really punchy orange, slightly leaning pink, and then it shifts to gold. And then this shade is a really beautiful, pretty vibrant kind of eggplant color, and it shifts to orange all the way to green. Next two shades are Witching Star and Olivine, and these are kind of like, they have fine sparkles throughout them, but they have a more opaque base to them as well. So they kind of seem to be made up of kind of two different particle sizes of mica. And this one has like a dark teal, almost slightly more leaning green base to it. And then Olivine is so interesting. I really love the shade. It has blue sparkles throughout it, but it's very olivey. So it's really interesting, very dimensional. And then the shade is very pink, kind of straight on, maybe slightly leaning a little bit like a salmon color. And then it shifts to yellow gold all the way to green. And this one definitely has a little bit of like a blue shift, especially visible up close, like right here. Last two shades are Dark Star and Firestorm, and these are, I would say, the most sparkly. They have a more piecier texture, slightly larger particle size versus the smoother shades in the beginning. And they're also pretty opaque. And this one is just so fiery, so fun. It's like a dark orangey red with a brighter orange and yellow, and then it shifts yellow to green. And then the top shade is like a smoky plum. I have a darker base to it, and then it shifts to like a light gold and then green, and there's a little bit like almost like a silver in between there as well. It's really interesting. And they do smooth out really nicely, but they do definitely have that extra sparkle. I'm going to do just a couple of comparisons. So the top shade is Firestorm, and below that is X-Class Flare. This shade definitely came to mind the moment I saw this one. There is a little bit of a difference, but I feel like they're pretty similar. I think the base on X-Class Flare is darker, more of a truer red. And the new shade actually looks more like a pink base in comparison, but they are definitely very similar in essence, but they have slight variation. And then these three shades, these two definitely looked a lot more similar in the pan than they actually do swatched out. So this is Dark Star, then Witch's Broom Nebula, and then Pisces. So they're actually pretty different. This one's definitely much more smokier. This is more vibrant. This one has a teal base. And then here's a close-up of these two, since they are quite similar. Next up is Witching Star at the top, the new shade, then Exoplanet, then Zenith, then Hypernova, and then Protostar. I feel like these three shades with this one down here are really similar with slight nuance differences. I think this one is the least similar, but especially all three of these, they have very similar bases to them, which is like a teal base. And I feel like if anything, this one's maybe a little bit brighter and just it's maybe slightly leaning a little bit more pink. And then this one, I feel like the pink straight on reflect is a little bit more subtle, but these two are definitely very similar. But these two are definitely even really similar in the particle size versus this shade is much more of a finer, smoother particle, a bit less sparkly. They're definitely very, very similar between all these shades. The shift is very, very on par. Picked up a Regolith. And I'm just gonna put that into my crease. And these are super pigmented and they do pick up very easily with the blending brush. There's definitely a bit of kick up in the pan. You might wanna tap it off if you kind of wanna be able to build it up a little bit more. So I'm first starting in the crease and just kind of blending it all the way around. And then I'm going to pack it down onto my lid. Just want this blend here to be a little bit smoother. I did prime with the Morphe eyeshadow primer and I do feel like it has just like a little bit of kind of tug to it with this formula. So next I'm packing it on my lid. Just trying to cover most of my lid and then a little bit underneath my lower lash line and then just further blending out. I'm using this brush because it's kind of flat. I'm using it on the flat side. Picked up Scorched Earth on the Refer 28 brush and I misted it with the Carla Cosmetics Fix Potion. And it's just gonna go all over the lid. Look how beautifully fiery orangey it is. It's like very orange on this angle, and then here it goes to like more of a goldy orange. So, so pretty. So this is just like a really simple 2 eyeshadow look. And here's the first finished look. For the second look, I primed with the Milani eyeshadow primer, and I'm first going in with Moon Moss. And I'm going to be starting that out predominantly on the outer corner. And it is kind of sticking down a little bit, so I think I should have waited for the eyeshadow primer to kind of set down. So I'm actually going to go in with a setting powder, just kind of on the edges here. And then I'm going to go back in with this shade, and it's definitely blending better now that I've added that in. It's not really catching on the primer. And then I do want to bring it down just a little bit. And then taking Hyper Void, and it's just going to go on the outermost corner. And I'm blending it into, what was it, Moon Moss? With using really small circular motions, and that was really nicely blended in there. Picked up Emerald Eclipse and again misted it with the Carla Cosmetics Mist Potion, and it's gonna go onto the outer corner and a little bit on an angle. I don't want to bring it too much inwards, And then I'm going to go back in with the other brush that I used. And I'm just going to make sure that there's no harsh edges out here. Picked up Olivine and again misted it. And it's going to go in the inner lid. And I'm going to layer it a little bit onto the dark green. And I feel like these are going to be really nice together. I'm kind of picking it up just a little bit just to lighten up the dark green, and I really like the way that came out. And then taking a little bit of the dark green underneath my low lash line, and here's the finished look. The mattes. So first I'm going to talk about the mattes. I do have a lot of experience with Terra Moon's mattes, shimmers, etc. And I felt consistency wise these all felt the same as previous shadows that I've tried from Terra Moon's. So if you've been on my channel, you know I'm not the biggest fan of their mattes because they are the more powdery mattes. So there is more kick up in the pan, and I definitely recommend kind of tapping off the brush a little bit so that you don't get one, fallout from the mattes, and two, if you prefer to build up the look, to give you that opportunity, because these are definitely quite pigmented. And also they tend to stick down with some eyeshadow primers that kind of remain a little bit tacky. Like not every matte formula necessarily works with any eyeshadow primer, so I do prefer these mattes on a set eyeshadow primer just to really give it that smooth base for them to really blend out, and they do blend out really nicely. So this really comes down to preference. These mattes are just not my most favorite matte formula. That doesn't mean it's a bad formula, it's just not a formula that I prefer to work with, but that doesn't make them not workable, not usable, etc. Like they work fine. I just, if I'm getting ready for work in the morning, I'm going to opt for a formula that I do enjoy working with a little bit more. That being said, I do really like the assortment of the shades. I do feel like the shade could have been probably something else. It's really light, it's really pale, and I don't think it's going to really mix well with most of these shades, and with this one especially, it's going to just like really gray this out. So let's talk about the shimmers. We have two satin shades and then different varying levels of sparkly. I really went into depth about each of the shades in the detailed portion. We do have some really sparkly shades, which are these two, and then we have some like slightly less sparkly but still really sparkly, but they are kind of like a little bit different in texture, which would be these two shades, I would say. And then this one's also maybe just slightly leaning satin, and then this one is like a really nice smooth metallic, kind of like a very standard Terra Moon's formula. I did do a detailed video where I talked about all the shimmer shadows and the textures they have, and I swatched all of my Terra Moon's eyeshadows, so check that video out if you want to see all their shimmer shadows in action. I believe it was over 300 eyeshadows. And then we have kind of like a hybrid in between where these are just a little bit more shiny and metallic than these two shades, I would say. Specifically this one right here is beautiful bronze. Really love these kinds of shades. These are just so stunning and really nice and easy to use every day, using with a brush or finger, whichever you prefer. They will not accentuate any skin texture. I don't think actually any of these will accentuate skin texture. These are more sparkly and they do have a larger particle size, but not in a way where you have to be careful and like how much you put down. Of course, you recommend a tacky primer with specifically like these kinds of shades just to really get the sparkle to stick down, but these are really beautiful. But in the comparison swatches, you could see that they've definitely done similar shades specifically to these two, so I do feel like they're a little bit redundant in the Terra Moon's lineup of single eyeshadows that they have to offer. Like there's a little bit of nuance, but is it enough? I think personally, like I feel like this kind of shade is a little bit more of a standout to me, and then this one as well. I feel like this one's really beautifully smooth and glowy. And then I do appreciate the satins. I'm not the biggest fan of satins, but these are like nice satins. These don't feel like the kind of satins I've seen from more mainstream brands where every time I swatch it, I'm like, I could just use a matte eyeshadow. I would prefer using a matte eyeshadow because sometimes also the mainstream satins tend to feel a little bit almost thicker, but that's really just a huge personal preference. So I really overall like that they have so many different finishes in here, because you really get to pick and choose what kind of finish you prefer and then what color you prefer as well. So if you don't want like super sparkly shades, you can opt for some of the smoother shades. And then if you like some neutrals, you have some neutrals in this collection as well. Then you have some more kind of spicy, more interesting shades as well. So it's a nicely varied collection, and I feel like the color story definitely goes together. I wish there was one more deeper matte maybe instead of this one, because some of these shades do definitely have a little bit of a darker base to them, specifically like these two. And then of course we have like a darker red and then this forest green, which goes with the dark matte. But I feel like I'm just missing one more, or maybe something a little bit plummy to kind of play off of these tones. But let me know in the comments below which of the shades is your favorite. Do you plan on picking anything up? Are you putting it on your wish list? Also let me know which look is your favorite. And if you enjoyed this video and you will like seeing swatches up close and personal of shiny, sparkly, shifty eyeshadows, then I will have some other videos up on the screen for you. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.